Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Shaded Youth. As usual, we have a special guest for today. And the nature of today's guest is pretty special, in my opinion. He's a fellow podcaster in the Muslim podcast scene, I guess. The only difference is he does it with a group of his friends on a weekly basis. Alhamdulillah, and they've actually been very successful on their own platforms of, not just the audio platforms, but also with their little clips on TikTok as well, mashallah. So without further ado, Faizan, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, alhamdulillah, man. I appreciate you thinking of me and having me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Of course, man, alhamdulillah. So the reason why I'm a bit excited is because this is kind of like my first actual conversation with someone doing this exact same thing, right? It's pretty interesting, especially since I've been a one man team for like the last year or so, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been, I wouldn't say a lonely journey. It's been one where I'm like learning a lot by myself. I'm learning what fits for me, just not to strain myself and like the time that I do get to have in the week to record these, because I know like we're both students and I'm sure we have like other stuff going on, alhamdulillah. And so you do have to kind of leave time aside. But I'm pretty curious as to like what your experience has been like, especially working with a group of your friends. So yeah, I guess the first question we can start off is like, just speak about exactly like who you are, what you do, and then maybe you can transition into the podcast you started as well.
For sure. So I guess like a quick little intro about me and like our little group. So my name is Faizan. I'm one of the co-hosts of this podcast called MPL, Masjid Parking Lot. And so
Best
really
name, by the way.
oh, thank
It's an
you.
amazing name.
Yeah, so the story behind the name actually is when we like at least like where I grew up and where like the other hosts grew up, like anytime you think of like a masjid parking lot, like everyone has a completely different like crazy story about it. And so really the focus of this podcast was to have those like taboo and interesting conversations and like bring those diverse perspectives. And when you think of like a masjid parking lot, you think of like kids running around, you think of like those uncles gossiping, you think of like those haram couples in the back, you think of people smoking weed as well, which is
For
kind of
sure, for
weird.
sure.
But it's like a plethora of different things that you think about when you think of like a parking lot or like a masjid parking lot. And so that's kind of what we like built it off of. We're like, hey, this is gonna be a space where it's gonna have like these needed conversations. Sometimes it'll be funny, sometimes it'll be stupid, sometimes it'll be serious. And yeah, that's kind of what it was. But really the idea of it was to like humanize the Muslim experience, because I think the media has portrayed us in a way where it's not really representative of like 99% of Muslims out there. So it was really a way to like reclaim the narrative. And so yeah, and that's kind of in a nutshell what our podcast is about. And yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm happy that I'm doing it with such an amazing group of people.
That's amazing, man. So just to get to know you a little bit, like what do you do like for the most part? Like, are you a student? Do you have like a part-time job? Like, what are your hobbies? That kind of thing.
For sure, man. So I am 22. I am currently a student. So the program I'm in is a double major program where I'm basically doing health sciences and
Mm,
business administration. So that's the reason why it's a 5-year program and not like a traditional 4-year program. And so from my academic side, that's kind of what I'm doing. It sounds a bit intense, which it can get at times, but I'm enjoying it, alhamdulillah. From like a more professional side, because mesh well with each other, because this business and then this health side. But right now I'm kind of more focused on the business side of things. Right now I am working as an intern full time at Pepsi, the
mm.
drinks and whatnot. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment, and going back into my final year next year, and inshallah I can land a good full-time job. And in my free time, it's mainly doing this podcast. I'm a huge sports fan. I love soccer, basketball. Loving the playoffs right now for NBA. And
As a New York fan, it's terrible.
oh man, are you a Knicks fan?
My friends are. I've just kind of listened here and there, but I know the Knicks are doing garbage right now.
Yeah. I mean, they can be. I was an OKC fan, and we're
Uh-huh.
like all the way at the bottom right now. So, I mean, something's better than nothing.
Of course, man. So you mentioned that you are also a health sciences major, which is pretty interesting because I'm a nursing student actually.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm pretty into healthcare, I guess. I'm in my third year. I have one more year to go. I'm about to turn 21 soon. So that's gonna be interesting. And it's pretty cool. Why'd you do a double major in both business and health sciences?
Okay, so initially I actually wanted to be a doctor and I wanted to go into medicine. And the way it kind of worked with that program was I started off in my first year in health sciences. In high school, I like loved biology, chemistry, like all the sciences. I did really well. But then something I personally realized through my university career was what I envisioned medicine to be was based off of what I liked in the raw sciences. And I felt like there was a mismatch between what I liked and what I thought medicine would be versus what it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And so after realizing that, there's just my interest started to kind of shift. And then for some of my, elective courses and whatnot, I started taking a few business courses and then started enjoying that. And then I kind of just opted into a double major with the business.
That's dope, man. And also if there's like a lag or anything, just let me know. Because there is like a slight lag coming from your side, but it's not too big of a problem right now. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, that sounds really dope, man. Mashallah. So you said you're more into the business aspect of it right now. You're working with Pepsi. Well, like I'm pretty curious. It's a pretty big company. Like what are you doing for them?
So I'm working in their finance, like the corporate finance department, and
Hmm.
so they have like a bunch of different teams. But like if I could quickly summarize it, last year, I was intern with them last year as well. Like last year, I was in a different function, which was like FP&A, which is like financial planning essentially.
Hmm.
And so they look at like the business from like a bird's eye view and see like, okay, how can we figure out what we want to do with the business from a strategy perspective. And then this year, I'm on a different team. It's called food service. Basically, it's like, when you go into like a Subway and you see like a bag of chips and that's like
Hmm.
Lay's. By the
Yeah.
way, Pepsi owns like a lot of foods and like one of them is like Lay's. And so that's what food service is. It's like anything that's like Pepsi owned that you would eat outside the home. And so, when you go to like a Pepsi and you want to get like, when you go to like a Subway and you want to get like a Pepsi and Lay's, like that's what it is. And so I'm kind of working on their finance side to make sure like everything's going okay, kind of helping them in the long term, all that fun stuff.
That's dope, man. And this
Yeah.
stuff doesn't have anything to do with your podcast. I was just generally super curious.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's all good, man.
yeah, I have a lot of friends that are doing business, and whether it be consulting or more on the tech side of things. It's just really interesting hearing like exactly what they do, and especially in such large companies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to what you guys are doing with Masjid Parking Lot. You said where you got the name, right? The idea of a parking lot being just like um where everything goes on, right? So how did you go about choosing who's the host of the podcast, and how did you kind of set the vibe of what you're going for? Because obviously you were saying you wanted to be you wanted to kind of reclaim the narrative, right? But that's a bit vague. That can be going in different avenues. There's a ton of Muslim podcasts out there. So what image were you guys essentially going for?
Yeah, to answer like the first bit of the question in terms of like hosts, it wasn't a case where like, one of us came up with the idea and then we like recruited other people.
Hmm.
It was more just like so like basically what happened was um there's five of us on there right now.
Right.
And so two of us, me and another girl, Misha, we were actually working together on the same team for the MSA. Two of
Mm,
the other girls, Yasmin and Randa, they were also working in the MSA together on a different team. And so we kind of like became friends through the MSA and just through like MSA events and like, we would just like, study groups, whatever, we would talk about these things and like, talk about like things happening around the world. And it seemed like our interests sort of aligned in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And randomly, we just thought like, it'd be kind of cool if we had a podcast. Like, every friend group I feel like has talked about having a podcast.
Bro,
And
you have no idea how much I've annoyed my friends, and none of them were down.
yeah,
But
dude,
yeah, I
that's the thing.
digress.
That's the thing. I've asked so many of my friends even before this, and
Yeah,
they're just not. They're just like, yo, I'm
yeah,
not trying to
it's
go
fine.
public.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, yeah. So this was, I guess, one of those successful stories where you talk about having a podcast with your friends and they're actually down for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how it started. And so it wasn't like I went out and I like, did like an Instagram thing, like now hiring, and then people like sign up. Nah, it was just like it was pretty organic. And then the fifth guy, Ismail, he kind of came like a little bit later on, because he was a close friend of mine from way back when, but he wasn't initially part of the initial group. We had him on as a guest a couple times, and everyone liked him. And to be honest, like I was the only guy at the time, and I really wanted another guy because, as you can imagine, like, though we were like very like serious about it, and we were going about it in like an appropriate way, like being one guy and three girls, like it gets to you, man. And so I was like, listen, like if we're gonna continue this, we need to have another guy on here. And he seemed to be the best match, and he kind of came on, and now it's definitely it's a nicer dynamic because I don't feel left out. And so in terms of like how we started, that's kind of how it went. And to be honest, I kind of forgot the second part of your question.
All good. I wanted to add on to that part because I completely get that. Just curious, were you guys on the MSA board or just kind of like members, like going to events and stuff?
It was kind of all over the place. Some of them were on the board, like they were like the
Mm-hmm.
VPs. Like I know me and the other girl were like directors, which were like one level down,
Yeah.
and so we were kind of all over the place. So yeah,
So I completely get the part of like you being the only dude because the past year or so. So last year, I was also part of the MSA board. I was a treasurer, and a very close friend of mine who was the president. We got close through being on the board. Actually, we hung out a ton afterwards. We became super close. Now we love hanging out with each other. Um, and then afterwards, he kind of dropped it. Right? He dropped the whole board thing, and I was left to kind of just be president. And then
oh
I
damn,
had to be president the past year being the only dude because every other candidate was a girl. So it was four other sisters with me being the only dude, which is fine. Alhamdulillah. It's just like you said, it can, you would like another dude, right? Like no matter how much people say that, they're comfortable with each other and stuff like that, like being with someone else of the like same gender, like they'll relate to you in a way like no one else can, like honestly.
exactly, and like the thing is like, yo, even if like but even best case scenario, if even all the girls like you set boundaries with them, everything,
Of
it's
course.
just like having like you when you're around like just girls, you have to overthink everything. Like it's like, dude, if you want to breathe, you gotta be like, okay, do I have to breathe too quick or too slow? Like are they gonna take this the wrong way? Like that's obviously an exaggeration, but
Bro, I
like
was thinking that same thing as like, especially as like president, right? Which is a like quote unquote like the top position.
yeah,
Of course, like I don't want it to be seen like that. No one really does, but like you get that in your head. Like, am I being too like dictatorish? Like, will they think I'm like
yeah,
mansplaining this or like it's like I'm not
yeah.
trying to, but it's just like subconscious thought that just kind of creeps up. It's really weird.
Exactly, yeah. And then it's like, when you're in a leadership position like the president, you don't want to be too strict, but then if you're too
Mm.
friendly, like am I being too friendly? Like are they it's oh my God, it's horrible, dude.
I get it, bro. I completely get it. So yeah, you were just going into like so you said the initial group was you and these three other sisters, and then you also included your friend Ismail somewhere along the way. And then alhamdulillah, you guys have done um a podcast every week from what it seems. It seems like you guys have not really missed any week, right?
Yeah, man, alhamdulillah. I'm happy with the consistency. We're I think like almost 50 weeks strong.
That's amazing, bro. Because
Alhamdulillah.
technically I actually started this um like for longer, but I have less episodes.
Oh yeah.
Bro, the amount of like hiatuses, like the first one was like I think like 5 or 6 months because like COVID completely wrecked everything. And
Yeah.
then the second one was like around 3 or 4 months just because like the semester was so stressful. And now, alhamdulillah, I'm trying not to go more than like 2 weeks. Like I've been pretty okay with it this year.
Nice, nice.
So I've been pretty okay with it, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I want to ask you, what was your trick into being so consistent with it? Because I imagine, especially with 5 people, that can obviously be easier, but also I can see it being more difficult, like navigating each other's schedules, especially with finals week. I'm sure maybe with Ramadan it's a lot harder. So yeah, could you just speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And I think like one of the things I want to highlight here is that though our group we're like a really good close group of friends,
Hmm.
but you know, like I'm sure you can think of like, you know, some of your boys that you might want to do a podcast with, but like they might not be serious, or it's like really hard to hold them
Yeah,
accountable because they're
that's
your
most of
boys,
them.
right?
That's most of them, bro. They're all goofy.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
It's like they'll say yeah to come down, whatever, but then like you'll be like backpacking the whole time, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So the one thing is that these guys are not like that in
Hmm.
that they we all are on the same page and we hold each other accountable. There's been times obviously where like I've had a lot of schoolwork or whatever and I have to they've had to like carry more of the load. Other weeks where I have had to do it, whatever, but generally speaking, everyone's been like really strict with we have to do this every single week. You know, this is something that we all signed up for, and we're going to try our best to do it and hold each other accountable. Now, also, we have to keep in mind that like there's 5 of us, and like for example, take a podcast like yourself. Like, you know, if you get busy and your schedule doesn't allow you to do it, there's no one there telling like, yo, Shaquille, like we gotta do an episode, or like, yo,
Hmm.
Shaquille, like at least let me take over so I can do an episode. It's like you're fully sort of like reliant on yourself and the
Yeah.
self-discipline. And so that's helpful where, for example, if I have a busy week, I know there's 4 other people who can just meet up and do an episode, or 3 other people who can just meet up and do an episode. And so that helps in that consistency sake. Because frankly, like you don't need all 5. You just like we've decided as a group that like if you have a minimum of 3, we're gonna do an episode,
Mm.
right? If more people want to join, they can join. And another reason it helps with consistency is because there's 5 of us, naturally we all have different areas of interest as well, right? So some of them like talking about, you know, like cultural versus religion more. Some people like talking more about like racism. Some of them like talking more about feminism. I like to just in general meet new people and like, you know, have different guests on. And so what we'll do is we'll assign each other based on our interests, like what episode we want to do, and just take lead on it. And so, like for example,
Mm.
right now I'm planning 2 episodes. Number one is like navigating the professional world as a Muslim, and then another one is like pornography addiction as a Muslim. Right? Those 2 episodes, no one else wanted to take lead on, and it interested me, so I'm gonna do it. And so, just as an example, like there's 5 of us, and let's say each of us takes a lead on 2 episodes. That's 10 episodes that all of us can do for the next 10 weeks.
Hmm.
That's not even including the episode that we're gonna be on together. And so, just like that excess of manpower helps in retaining the consistency. And as you can imagine, right? Imagine you had like 4 of your boys who were like committed. It would make things a lot easier, and your work
Definitely.
would go
Hmm.
from like 100% to 20%, right? So that definitely helps in consistency and like uploading every week.
Oh, by the way, if it seems like I'm like asking for anything that you can't really release, then you don't have to say it because I don't know. That seem it might be confidential. I'm not sure based on your
Oh
team.
no,
I don't know.
it's all good. Don't worry, man.
Okay. Okay, yeah, because this is um this is also like exciting for me because I want to learn from you as much as possible, especially since you have a team, you have these topics that are well established, mashallah. And so like I'm just trying to learn as much as I can through this episode as well.
Yeah, for sure,
Um
dude. And I'm learning from you too. So feel free to share as much as you want.
of course, man, alhamdulillah. So you mentioned that each of you takes a certain amount of topics. How far ahead are these episodes planned, and then when are they recorded prior to release date?
Yeah, so it depends. Like for example, I think by the end of like January or February of this year, we had
Mhm.
enough episodes to go till end of April. We had already
that's
recorded everything
that's
because
crazy.
yeah, yeah. And so the reason we did that was because in like I'm not sure like because we're in Canada. I'm not sure like how your like semester breaks work and like winter break and stuff,
Yeah.
but we had like 3 weeks in winter break, and then like
Yeah,
the beginning
it's
of the
about the
semester.
same thing for us. We have like a month off, like
Okay, yeah,
between December to January. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then like the beginning of the semester is usually kind of chill. So it's like it's not that deep. And so we use that time to just like record a bunch because like like at the closer to when midterms start happening and then assignments are due, whatever, like all of us are students, like we knew we were gonna be busy. And so we just recorded a bunch and then we just because we already recorded it, all there needs to be done is like editing. And
Mhm.
so like I said, it varies. Like right now is the summer, and so our availability is a little bit more free. And so right now we only have like 2 or 3 episodes in our back pocket that we could, that we have for the next 2 3 weeks if we don't record. And so we'll have to continue recording more. During the school year, we usually go like a lot more in advance just to kind of hedge against any like, you know, crazy weeks, finals, whatever. But when it's like summertime and it's downtime, we don't have as much as a buffer just because like we can kind of meet up more frequently.
For sure. And so how would that kind of work when let's say a pressing matter comes up, such as like a couple weeks ago. I know you guys released a pass on episode, especially with what's going on right now. Um, do you kind of take a break from that schedule? Like once you see like something, okay, we got to talk about this, like we got to release an episode right now, and then you kind of just take a break from that schedule.
It okay, so there's two parts to that question. The first one is there's a lot of pressing matters that can always happen, right? Like
Of
that's
course.
just how geopolitics really works. And so we've had conversations, there's stuff that's happened. I can't remember exactly what, like apart from the Palestine one, that have happened in the past. Like for example, like the hijab bans in like public schools in like France and like like things like that. And
Hmm.
so some of the co-hosts were like, yeah, we should talk about it, but then the conversation really was like, what are we gonna say? Like, are we just putting this episode out to show the world, hey, look, we're woke, we're talking about France? Saying no, like the end goal is to add some sort of value to whoever is listening. And if how am I supposed to add value? Like I am not a French citizen, nor am I
Hmm.
a woman who has my rights, stripped of me. So what will I contribute to the conversation that will actually add value? Nothing, right? And so when it comes to like topics like these, the first thing is like, why are we even doing it? Is there a reason to do it? If the answer is yes, okay, then let's figure out who would be the best person to have on this episode. Is it us or is it guests? Typically, it's guests, right? And so, for example, we released an episode for like the Sheikh Jarrah episode. That was because that was something that was relevant, and then we had two girls on who were Palestinian citizens living in the occupied area where like Israel occupied area. And
Hmm.
so they could actually speak to it because A, they grew up there, and B, they have firsthand evidence, and C, they want to raise awareness. So it's not just a bunch of like, goons just talking about things that like they have no knowledge about.
Yeah.
And so that's how
Armchair reporters, right?
exactly, yeah.
Hmm.
Like that's how we like I like to, and that's how we in general kind of deal with like things that are happening around the world. And so yeah, that's kind of how we go about it. I don't like to just like hop on the bandwagon just for the sake of because I know if I was listening to if I wanted to educate myself on something, frankly, I wouldn't go to a podcast, right? I would go to like a reliable source, and unless that reliable source comes onto our podcast, then I would be hesitant on just talking about it.
For sure. Yeah, you want to get the facts right, and obviously perspective matters too. Like I can listen to both people, but if one of them is like not reliable, then I just won't take anything they're saying, right? So that's definitely important. Um,
Exactly, yeah.
I want to ask, um, so do you guys have a set kind of figure in your head of like how many episodes to do with the guest and then how many episodes to do with your group? And does that also factor into like what the audience wants as well?
Not really. We don't have like a set number, but like generally, we have like our rule of thumb is basically like just use your judgment. Like in this episode, will it be helpful to have one, two, or three guests? Will it be helpful to have members of our own like co-hosts? So like the two examples I gave you were like, an episode on like pornography addiction. like we're not gonna have our co-hosts on there because A, like even if they had experience with it, I don't think anyone would publicize it. And
Yeah,
B, if I as a listener was listening to a podcast group on it, I would want information from a mental health counselor as well as an imam. And
for
so
sure.
in that frame of reference, the two guests that I want on that episode is a mental health counselor and an imam. Right. And so that would be an example
I
of
have a suggestion for the episode too, if you don't mind.
yeah, for sure.
As you finish the what you were just gonna say, actually.
Okay, sure, sure. And then like, but if we're talking about like, for example, just any other episode, like if we're talking about like the MSA, for example, that's something that most of like our co-hosts can speak to. And so we'll be like, okay, this is an episode that we can relate to, and so this is an episode that we will have. The idea of like, obviously having um like our group part of like as many episodes as possible is there. Like we do keep in
Mhm.
mind because at the end of the day, it's our podcast, and so we want to have our character develop through the podcast, but at the same time we don't want to dilute any like important issues that we it'd be better to have like a guest. But yeah, you were saying.
For sure, yeah. So I was gonna suggest, especially for the porn addiction podcast, because I actually did an episode about this too, and I had I don't know if you're on Twitter much, but it's a mom that's fairly active on Twitter, from Canada actually. So he's Maulana Abdullah Ayaz Mulani. I don't know if you're familiar with him. But yeah, so he's been writing a couple papers recently, or one huge paper recently about the effects of porn addiction on long-term marriage. And so we kind of discussed some of that like on our episode, like the harms of it, like just kind of breaking down the myth of like you can do it in moderation, right? Because everyone in the West kind of thinks that you can do this in moderation and then it won't affect your life whatsoever, like any other addiction, but that's not the case at all. And you said you wanted two perspectives, which I think is amazing. So I was also going to suggest uh, a New York local, Way of Life SQ. I don't know if you know him either, but he's on TikTok as well, and then he also makes those like short IG videos. But he actually has like, of course, first-hand experience. He has like a past that he goes into a lot. And of course, he does talk about this. Like he's not really shy to talk about any matter. But the way he deals with like speaking about it, I think is very unique, and I think is like worth listening to. So if you want to like take the suggestions to go for it,
Yeah, no, I
I don't know if you will.
definitely will. I definitely will. Yeah,
Gotcha.
thank you for sharing, man.
Of course, man. And yeah, you seem like dope topics to talk about, and like especially like they're relevant. Like these things are not just um like theories that don't really happen. Like this, like you said, porn addiction is probably something that most dudes in the West are dealing with, and they're just too shy to really talk about. So yeah,
Exactly.
I think it's super important to have something like that. So what would you say that being in that kind of group environment of having that podcast, and you make it seem like it's very cohesive, mashallah. Like it seems like the team is amazing and you guys are talking it out, cooperating with each other. Is it difficult to have that many voices have input on the podcast itself? And um does it ever get difficult to see what trajectory to actually bring the podcast because of that?
Yeah, so we've talked about like that a little bit kind of behind the scenes, and we had a lot of discussion on like how long we want episodes to be, because everyone on in our group has a different personality, which translates that into how vocal they are, and like how much they want to dive into it. But I think like to some extent, like that issue isn't as pertinent, just because not everyone in our group talks a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
so like like there's two of them who I know they're very opinionated, very expressive. And so if you're listening to an episode, going into it, you sort of anticipate that, and you're like, okay, I knew these two individuals are going to be a lot more opinionated on this particular topic. So naturally, other people will step back because A, they just want to have them kind of voice their opinion and kind of share what they want to share, or B, just I don't have much to say on it. And so I don't think that that's too much of an issue. Obviously there's times where like everyone will want to contribute, and then it gets a little bit long. But we know in the back of our mind that, like, we have like a max limit for how long an episode should be, and beforehand we have like different prompts, which, similar to how you have different prompts for how you want to conduct the episode. And so we'll run it by the group, be like, yo, this is kind of what we're going to be talking about. Everyone cool with it? Okay, awesome. And so that way, so people have like an idea of like what they want to share. And if it gets too long, then like there's been times literally where in the Zoom chat it's like, yo, like Faizan, stop talking, we're moving on, right? It's like
Oh, that's
no.
harsh. That's harsh, man.
It is, but like when you do it like so often, it just gets normal, right?
I
And it's
got you.
no hard feelings either, right? It's
Mm.
just, it is what it is. And there's literally been times where like, for example, I'm leading an episode and someone just keeps talking, and I'm like, dude, I swear if you don't stop, like, but
That's funny. Okay, that so for the most part, you guys are pretty cool with expressing yourselves, like even when you disagree, right? Like there's no one really like holding back their actual opinion on matters.
yeah, obviously, there have been some instances where I don't want to say it has gotten heated, but there's been some instances where I feel like we when we discuss like an issue or like a topic, some people will either phrase it in a way that's a little bit like aggressive, or if they
Hmm.
if it's a topic that's like really close, if it's a topic that's really close to home, and then like someone challenges your idea or like your notion of it, naturally you get like a little bit defensive.
Yeah, of
But like,
course.
things that, like, when things like that happen, we have a very like simple rule. It's like, listen, if there's anything that we've talked about on the podcast that you don't want aired, then just cut it out, right? And there have been instances where,
That's weird. Okay, inshallah, you can continue on where you left off.
yeah, so I was gonna say, like, if there's a topic that is sort of like close to your heart and someone comes and challenges that, like, naturally you will, get a bit defensive or like resistant to that challenge. And like, we generally have a simple rule. It's like, listen, if you say something that you later realize that it was too personal or you don't want it to be aired, then just cut it out, right? Or if there's a moment where, for example, we have to stop recording because whatever happened. And so though we are a cohesive unit, like any like group of friends or like any relationship really, it's not all smooth sailing, right? But we always make sure to like not have those things affect our like podcast relationship. And so yeah, I wouldn't I would definitely say there have been times where, there has been like, I don't know how to phrase this, but like I know there's like instances that I can like think of, but obviously I can't share.
I got you. No worries. No worries.
Yeah. But
Um,
yeah, it's not like I said, it's not all smooth sailing, but for the most part, like we make sure to hash out anything that needs to be hashed out, and kind of make sure like everyone's cool with each other afterwards.
That's good. I wanted to comment that I mean, it seems like you guys are not afraid to like say what you how you truly feel about things, which is really good, for, especially for a team. Um, it reminds me of a book that I was reading called Five Dysfunctions of a Team, which I haven't really read any other like leadership type books, but that book was amazing. I finished it in like a day. Like it was, I couldn't stop reading it pretty much. But one idea that they talk about is the idea of passionate discourse, right? So when a team kind of just keeps their opinions to themselves and they're not fully on board with an idea, that affects how they actually go about executing the idea that was agreed upon, right? Because if they're not fully on board with it, then that the quality of what they're doing is going to be terrible, right? They
Yeah,
won't put as much energy into it. Whereas, um, let's say me and you are disagreeing about something, you have an idea, and I at least voice my opinion, right? I at least put it out in the agenda or whatever, and then the group kind of votes on it. And even if my idea gets thrown back at me and everyone disagrees, at least I got to say what I want to say, and that's usually all humans really want to do. They kind of just want to express themselves rather than always have their side be agreed with. So I think that's really important. Just kind of making sure that everyone's voices are heard at least. And like it seems like you guys like I said are just aren't shy to at least be direct with each other at least.
yeah, and actually, like an example of that was, I think like in January or February, basically me and like the other male cohort, Ismail. Wait, just give me 1 second.
No worries.
I'm gonna be back in like 2 minutes. My parents just
All
need
good,
something.
man.
It's a little bit urgent.
All good, bro.
Parents are tech My parents are technically Indian, but my extended family, so my mom's side, before when the partition happened, like they were like in the eastern and western parts of India, which is now like Bangladesh and Pakistan, right?
Hmm.
So I have second cousins and like third cousins that are from like in from Pakistan and Bangladesh, but like technically my parents are Indian, but extended families from like everywhere.
Okay, gotcha. So it's a bit complicated.
Yeah. What about you?
I'm full Bengali.
Oh, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
full Bengali. What do you speak at home though?
We mainly speak Urdu.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Is there a
Um,
lot of like overlap between like Bengali and like Urdu, or is that a completely different language?
I think it depends. So there's different dialects of Bengali. So like, me and like a lot of my friends in the neighborhood that we live in, we're from a district called Silit. So it has a lot of the same words as Urdu because I think they're both from like Persian roots. So it'll share a lot of the same words. But I think it's easy to learn. However, they are very like different languages because like my dad knows like fluent Urdu and like fluent Hindi as well. Just because like he was he lived as a construction worker in Saudi for a while. And a lot of his coworkers were, from like Pakistan or like India. So I guess you kind of just pick up on the language, and because it's like a lot of the vocabulary is similar, I'm assuming like it's easier to pick up, but I'm not completely sure.
Ah, nice, nice.
Yeah. So I forget what we were speaking about. Do you remember?
I think yeah, I think you talked about this book you were reading and how it kind of fosters like this like
You were speaking about an incident that happened between you and your friend Ismail, but I think it got
oh
cut
yes,
off.
yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I was gonna say was like to your point about like, when you were talking about like the book and like people being open and vocal about like, what's in their
Hmm.
heart really. So I think there's two things to that. Like number one is that it's important for any group, whether it's in the MSA or whether it's in your coworker circle or like, even if you're playing sports, it's important for you to foster like a really open culture because if that doesn't happen then people are always going to be hesitant on like speaking up or they're going to feel like there's a fear of being judged or whatever it may be. And so the reason that's important is that alhamdulillah we did that like and every time there was an issue we what we actually do is like every like 4 to 6 weeks we have like a regroup meeting, and in this regroup meeting it's like, okay, are there any issues that you want to talk about? Are you being too overwhelmed? Like what's going on? Like how can we make sure that you're being best supported? And then for the podcast specifically, it's like, what do we want to do? What are the goals we want to achieve? Et cetera, et cetera. And so one so that's how we kind of do it. And so the thing I was talking about like with me and Ismail, so we basically wanted to have like a second segment, like we have like every episodes that go on Thursday, but we wanted to do like a second segment with like just me and him. And
Just the
so
boys.
yeah, just the boys basically.
Mhm.
And so we did it and we recorded like 20 episodes actually. We had a lot
Whoa.
done. Yeah, we had a lot done. But if you go on our YouTube channel, there's only like 3 episodes released.
Hmm.
And then we discontinued it. And the reason is because we felt like, or at least at the time, me and Ismail didn't recognize this, but at the time, the three girls, they were like, listen, this actually does not fit with MPL, and this does not fit the vision of what we all collectively described and wanted it to be. Obviously, like me and him, we put in all this work. We're like, no, 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 it does, don't worry about it. And so they're like, okay. And so we released episode one, we released episode two, we released episode three, and then slowly, slowly, Ismail and I, we came to the realization like, yo, it actually doesn't fit like what we wanted to do. And they weren't knocking the our work. They were like, yo, if you want to do this, you guys can create like your own channel and publish this, whatever. Like we'll even edit the video for you guys, but it just can't be under the banner of MPL. And so when we realized this, we're like, okay, cool. And even throughout, like even though we were like gung ho and like, no, we're gonna continue doing this, they still voiced their opinion and they were like, listen, you can do it, but just know like we still disagree with your thought process, and we still think it's not relevant to like what we're doing. And so they weren't scared of doing that, and we weren't scared of getting criticized for it. And in fact, I remember we had like a 2, maybe even 3 hour long the call about like, you know, the pros and cons, and like we kept going back and forth on like why we should do it, why we shouldn't do it, whatever, whatever. So that's just like one small example of like how even though we weren't necessarily on the same page, we were able to talk about it, and we were able to make sure that like, you know, discuss whatever was happening. And so, yeah, that's just kind of
Just
like
give me a
one of the,
second.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're good now. Sorry, could you just like rephrase like the last like 30 seconds or so?
Yeah, for sure. And so I was just gonna say like that example in and of itself just kind of goes to show that even though we weren't necessarily on the same page, and even though we disagreed on like what would be best for the podcast going forward, like no one was scared to like actually voice their opinion and like
Hmm.
talk about why this is not a good idea or why it is a good idea. And like, to be very honest, like during that like month, I guess, where we necessarily weren't on the same page, though it's like, yeah, you don't disagree with it and you don't let it get to you, like it did change, you know, even how we would like, it did kind of change the culture like temporarily, because naturally if you think about it, it becomes like it goes from a group of 5 friends to like a group against versus group 4, right? And so like
Yeah. Hmm.
everything
I
you
can see
say
that.
or everything you do, it's like, oh, but you're just saying this because you're biased, or like you're just saying this because you put in all this work and you really want this to be published, whatever. So yeah, though we were able to like voice our opinions and whatnot, there is the other side to it, which is like, yes, it will, as much as you want to not admit it, like it will affect your relationship like for a little bit. Because like think about it, like let's say you and your boys disagree on something really big, like they're still your boys, but like you still
Yeah,
disagree on something, right? So
I got you. What was the series you and your friend were gonna do?
it was called like Talk the Talk, and basically it was just like like I said, it was just like the two of us talking.
Hmm.
And I think the reason we realized we didn't want to continue it was because it gave off like the wrong vibe. And at
Okay.
the time, we released like a 4 part marriage series, and Ismail and I were like, "Yo, kind of building on to this, we should do like a series talking about like desirability." And so we're like, oh, here are like the traits of like desirable men or whatever. And
Hmm.
so it gave off like the wrong vibe. And like looking back at it, I'm like really happy we didn't continue it, because it just does not, like, it doesn't fit. But you know, it was kind of turning from like this nice podcast we're talking about like interesting taboo stuff to like a relationship focus, and that's just not something that we wanted it to go down. And so, and the thing is, the girls recognized that and they were right, but we didn't at the time. But then slowly we were able to.
I completely get you. Yeah, that sounds like a good call to make.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw like some of the marriage episodes. I think that was like the first exposure I ever got to your podcast actually. That series that you guys were doing. So how long were these episodes? You said you made 20 of them?
Yeah, they were anywhere between they were honestly it was a spectrum, but in total it was like I think 9 to 10 hours of content.
Dang, subhanallah. I
Yeah.
think it's I
For
think it
you,
says
imagine like you as a
yeah,
podcaster like throwing away 10 hours of content.
yeah. So I don't have like anything that drastic. But I can definitely like imagine, like it says a lot about you guys and like how you put the group forward eventually, right? Obviously you said that you made the wrong decision at first, but eventually you saw for what it was, and alhamdulillah you guys put the image of the or the vision of the group forward before like your own personal interest, which I think says a lot about um how united you guys are in terms of like where you see MPL going. But like I got very upset one time when we had it was me, and then I had like another friend of mine as like a guest host, because I do that a few times if I can like convince someone, because they're also hesitant, man. I don't get it.
Why?
But
Why?
it's just like the idea of like being public, like I think it freaks people out. I'm not sure,
No,
but
I don't get that. I don't get that. Like who,
right.
like who do you think you are? You know what I mean? Like Bro, it's not like this is gonna go viral on YouTube, like like a podcast that's like an hour and a half long. There's like a million people aren't gonna watch it. Like
Yeah,
as much as it sucks to like think that, like I would love it if a million people watched it, but like, are you that arrogant to think you're gonna
right.
be famous?
No, for sure. And it was a lot harder in the beginning, but then like I just kept doing it. And then I guess like my boys were just like, oh yo, he's like 30 episodes in. Like I think it's fair if we like come on for a couple episodes here and there. But yeah, so I get them on like if I'm losing a if I don't have a guest for that week or if I just want them on or whatever. But so I had a friend on as a guest host, and there was another guest, and this was a guest that I was trying to get for a couple months, and he actually helped me get him because he knows him personally, and so we had like a whole hour long chat. It was really fruitful. We talk about different things, and then so sometimes I record things like obviously like you guys know you record things weeks ahead or maybe even months ahead, and then I don't know if you do this, but I actually wait till like the week before I want to release it to just edit it, right? To even look at the footage, which is a horrible mistake. Terrible. Cause bro, when I check back like a month or two later, that footage was corrupted. Like it was straight up gone. And that whole like all the effort that I saw in like this is like an hour's worth of work, maybe like including like how much time I was waiting for, maybe like a couple hours, but yeah, I can't imagine losing like 9 or 10 hours. Like this is kind of like props to you guys for for definitely being united in that front.
Yeah, actually funny story on the Friends end. So for the Married series, so we had like a four part, like there was one with like just the guys, right?
Hmm.
And so in that episode, I went on like this 1 minute rant. And the thing is on TikTok, the worst part is I was the one who put it on TikTok. So it was just like a stupid decision on my end. I took it out of context and I was basically talking about, so we had a question. One of the guys, he posed a question about like, when we look at the context of marriage, like a lot of girls specifically,
I saw
um
this. I saw this. I know
yeah,
what you're gonna say. I saw
this is
this.
the one that got a lot
Yeah.
of hate, bro.
Yeah, I
This is the
saw all
one
the
that got a lot of
comments.
hate. Yeah, bro. Oh my god. So that one, my friends will not let that go because the one of the guys in that thing, like I went to high school with him since grade 9. We're
Hmm.
tight, and so I've known him for like 8 years now. And I was actually texting him today, and he's like, "Bro, you literally got me canceled."
Sorry, yeah, sorry. Could you because I interrupted you, could you just go over like what you said in that clip?
Oh yeah, so basically, I was talking about how, like, okay, again, out of context, whoever's listening to this,
I know,
please
I know, I know.
listen
It's gonna
carefully.
sound weird.
But I was basically talking about how like stay-at-home wives are like unproductive, and the thing is like the caveat I'll give is what I intended on saying was those who aren't mothers, number one, and number two is like I personally, like me personally as a person, I believe that everyone should be quote unquote productive in some capacity, whether that means you're working or volunteering or have a hobby that you're pursuing, whatever, right? And so if you're not someone who does that, like to me, again, this could be like a flawed way of thinking, but to me, that's unproductive. If you're just like, chilling and watching Netflix all day, like that's unproductive to me. And so I was just saying like those type of people are people that I personally wouldn't look for if I'm considering marriage. And I think is another thing people on TikTok didn't realize was that it was a marriage episode. And so naturally we're talking about things that we would like and dislike. And so
Hmm.
I can, it's my right to like and
It's
dislike
a
certain things,
personal
right?
opinion. Yeah.
Exactly. But again, most people on TikTok don't go out of their way to like watch like the whole hour long episode, whatever. So, they'll watch like the 40-second clip or whatever, and then just like judge you based on that. But yeah.
Yeah, sorry. There was like a prompt on my phone. Um,
Good.
but yeah, so you were saying like that got taken out of context. Does that happen a lot? Or was that just like that one time?
No, I don't think it happens too often. But
Okay.
that was definitely one of those like extreme moments. And I actually got bad, bro. Like reading some of the comments, and the thing was like I was the one who said it, and so I was the target of all the comments. And so when I was reading them, it was very interesting because there was no middle ground. The comments were either all one-sided towards like, yeah, he's right, or all like what the hell is wrong with you? Stop commenting on women, right? And so there was no middle ground, and it got to a point where honestly it got to me. Like I deleted TikTok for like a few days. I was like,
Oh man.
I'm not dealing with this. And yeah, and so when I got it back, I just like refused to look at any comments on that video, and I just like continued on with my day.
I get that. Yeah, it probably get to anyone if they kept seeing comments like that.
Yeah.
So um how do you choose the topics that are put forward for each episode? Like you had a marriage series. Was that something that was like deliberate? Like we're gonna have like a 4-part series, or was it just like, hey, we're like already kind of doing this, so maybe let's just see how much we can actually talk about this one thing. Yeah, like what goes into choosing a topic for these episodes?
Yeah, I think topics generally are just like initiative led in the sense that like if someone finds something interesting that they want to talk about, then
Mm-hmm.
we'll just kind of go for it. We have like a list, like we're actually pretty organized. Like I can't share it now because um confidentiality and stuff, but like
Of
honestly,
course.
like after we're done recording, I'll be happy to walk you personally through like how we structure everything. We're super organized, but we have like this nice Excel sheet, and then we have like all the topics written down, who we want to have as like guests and whatnot. And to answer specific about the marriage episode, that one was very deliberate and like very, very planned. Initially, we just wanted to have like one episode talking about like just marriage, how we perceive it as like young Muslims. But then like as we continue the conversation, and there were so many different things we wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, actually, the idea of having the marriage series came in September. And for context, it was released in February. And so it was a long time coming. Like the difference between I recorded the first episode, which was the male one, in I think October, and the last one that we recorded with the shuyukh was in January. And
Mm-hmm.
so just like it was a long time coming. Like even though it was just like 4 episodes, so you have to plan out a lot of different guests. You have to like make sure everyone's on the same page. And then finals were in the middle of that time. So you gotta have to kind of do everything. So it was very planned, and like we gave it a lot of thought before we kind of decided to do it. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad we did because I think it's one of my like favorite series till date so far.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, that sounds dope. Um, and I just remembered I wanted to go back to the point of how important it is for like everyone a part of the group to like voice their opinion and stuff, because I just remembered um it's actually factually incorrect that I've been doing this by myself for a year. The first 6 episodes I did have a co-host. Uh
I have to ask, what
Obviously, long story short, it just didn't work out. So I haven't really like talked about it extensively because like nothing like major happened. Like we're still cool. Like it's fine. But just like you said, like sometimes you get like you have those friends that it just doesn't work out like with a podcast or anything like that. So basically he had his own different ideas of how like a channel should be run. He was viewing it more from like a YouTube perspective, like, yo, we need more short form content. We need to be on this. And he was very into like the technical aspect of it. So he had like a 4K camera set up. We had like a banner. We had all of this stuff set up. And then I guess when COVID hit, we stopped recording because we were like, how are we gonna do this? Like we're in our houses. Like how am I supposed to record? And then I see like a bunch of these people like and you guys were doing like virtual interviews and stuff like that. And I was like, yo, we can do this. And at first the idea of the podcast is supposed to be like me and him just like on a weekly basis. And we had like interesting topics and whatnot. But I love the idea of having someone that I don't know and getting to know them for an hour. And yeah, like I mean, after 5 or 6 months, he kind of just wasn't about it either, and like that's fine. Like that's all good. And it was kind of clear to me that I was a lot more passionate about it than other people. And that's again, like I said, like completely fine. So I got the whole project to myself. I bought some more equipment because um some of the stuff belonged to him, and I was like, it's not fair for me to like use his stuff. Like it's obviously not cool. So I bought some stuff and like a mic, and this mic actually we had from before. But yeah, like it's really dope like hearing success stories with teams. especially since I know somewhere along the way, like someone either gets busy or like someone they don't have a falling out, but maybe like creative differences, like I said, where it's just better for like the project to like just not go forward. So it's really dope that um not even just two people, but like five people have managed to do this consistently for a good year now. Because you guys said you have done this for like 50 episodes, right?
Yeah, bro. And the thing is, like, yo, there's a difference in starting something with your boys, because,
Mm-hmm.
like, if you think about like the origins of your friendship, it probably starts, like through some sort of hobby, like sports or like something
Mm-hmm.
like that, or like school or whatever. But like for us, it wasn't necessarily like that. It started, like I mentioned, like in the MSA. In the MSA, everyone was already putting in the work, and so you
Mm-hmm.
kind of already have an idea of like how committed people are. And the second thing about the MSA is like if you're in the MSA, generally you have an inkling towards like these sort of things, right? And so whoever's like listening to this, and if they ever want to start a podcast, like think about, even if you want to do it with your boys, like think about like how they function in that sort of serious environment. Because I know for a fact, like some of my like, like diehard guy friends, like I don't think I could go 10 episodes with them. I don't think I could.
I get what you mean. I completely get what you mean. So obviously when you're starting off something, you have people to look towards as influence, right? So um MPL or other big Muslim podcasts that your viewers. I'm sure like there's some podcasts that have started because of MPL. Like I'm sure of that just because of like how consistent you guys have been and mashallah how big you guys have gotten, especially on TikTok. So what exactly like were some of your influences? Like, did you look towards like Muslim podcasts? Were you just looking at like other famous podcasts and then kind of take some ideas from them?
To be honest with you, I don't actually think we ever used anything as a benchmark. I think
Okay.
we honestly, I don't think there was, or maybe, or I don't know if there is at the moment either, like a podcast where it's just like a group of like 4 or 5 people, like just kind of talking,
Yeah,
especially in that like Muslim focused environment. I know there are podcasts that my friends do that are just like 4 or 5 people just chatting and like, just banter, but I don't think there was anything that was had.
that's structured.
Yeah, it was like structured as well as like I don't mean to make it sound like we're this like, oh, like on top of the world sort of thing, but like, I don't think there was anything with a group of friends that was focused on like highlighting that Muslim experience and like talking about these taboo sort of things. Like I don't like, maybe if you could shed light on it, but I didn't see that. And it wasn't like when I saw that I'm like, yo, we need to do this. It was literally just an idea like, yo, I think this would be kind of cool, and we just kind of ran with it. And I know that on Instagram, there's like pages and stuff where like, how people have like Instagram pages that like podcast coming soon and they give like a little description. I've seen pages that are similar to the ones that are like ours, but they haven't started anything. And so I don't know. Maybe they were there before us, maybe they weren't. I don't know, but I don't know. I honestly don't think there was any podcast that or any YouTube channel or whatever that we modeled ourselves after. It just kind of like, let's just see where this takes us sort of thing.
I got you. And that's actually like pretty refreshing to hear. And you guys are definitely right. Like this is I think the appeal of it is just how unique it is. Because I think this may have been deliberate, but I'm not sure. Like your your production is not like super, it doesn't require much. Like you guys are just on a Zoom call just talking, right? And I think that goes to show how key content really is. Like it doesn't really matter if you like I believe Ismail had like a really bad mic for the first few episodes, right? And people were like giving
Yeah,
him crap for that.
yeah.
Um, but then
You sound like a potato, man. What the hell?
right. So and then you guys eventually get the stuff like it's all about just starting and making sure your content is right, because if your content isn't right, like if you have all the gear and like all the 4K production and whatever, people will still not they're not going to watch if like what you're saying isn't substantial. Like it's if it's just the like banter like you said. then there's no real reason for people to watch.
Exactly, yeah. Like
Um,
honestly, we kind of
mhm,
just wanted it to be like if you're listening to us, it feels like you're sitting with a group of friends, right? And like and the thing is like one thing I like about it is that I sincerely believe that if we'll take you for example, like if Shaquille were to replace me or Ismail or any of the three girls, I think MPL would remain the exact same, right?
mhm.
And that's kind of what I wanted because not what I, but like what we wanted, because that's kind of what it that's how it should be, right? It should be where you're listening to them and you don't think you're getting lectured, you know, you don't think you're watching like a Yasakadi video or anything like that. You feel like, okay, this is just like a interesting, fun conversation that I wish I could have with my friends, or oh, I've had this conversation with my friends and it's refreshing to hear like another perspective.
Oh, for sure. I had a question in mind that I just lost, but I'll ask the next one on my prompt. So you guys, and it was a really good question too. Man, this sucks. I don't know if you feel this way, where like you had like a really good question and then you kind of just lose it. But yeah.
Dude,
So
you know what
next
I
thing, I,
do? I just
mhm.
I just type it in the Zoom chat, but I don't like click enter. And so
Ah,
if you
okay.
type something in and even if you close the Zoom chat, it stays there.
I should do that. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. But yeah, we can just move over. So you mentioned a few times now that you guys do post content on TikTok, and this is one of the few times where I've seen like TikTok is your main platform, right? I've seen like people and Muslim podcasts or other podcasts, they do post like snippets and clips here and there, but it seems like you guys have definitely built like uh an audience in TikTok first and foremost, and then it kind of just expands like outward as well. Was that deliberate? And how has your experience been on TikTok thus far?
Yeah, honestly, like I think like we when we're talking about like, you know, ideas or growth or whatever, we never really focus on TikTok too much. Like I think our
Hmm.
main thing is like YouTube and then second
Hmm.
is Instagram. I think TikTok, like as you know, it's like it's hit or miss, right?
Right.
And so TikTok is more of like a stepping stone. And so it's great for posting clips so that, you know, if someone's interested in listening to a longer version of it, they can head over to our like YouTube channel, whatever. And then on Instagram, we have like Instagram specific stuff. Like we do like Juma reflections, for example, right? We have like people submit like 100 word thing where they reflect on like a verse of the Quran or Hadith or whatever. And so I like to think that YouTube and Instagram are more of a focus, and TikTok is just like a raising awareness sort of thing. And so it's great that TikTok has helped us grow, and you know some of the clips have gone viral, and it's amazing. I hope that continues, but I never really look at TikTok like whether we have, you know, 5,000 followers, 10,000 followers, or like 20,000. Like to me, it doesn't really matter too much as long as our content is still good and YouTube and Instagram are growing. Like that's what kind of matters to me. And in terms of like TikTok experience, I think TikTok has helped in terms of like getting guests, for example, or having
Mm.
other content creators connect with us or us connecting with other content creators, right? Like there's a lot of content creators that we've had on as guests that we wouldn't have if, you know, we didn't have TikTok, or they themselves didn't, you know, post stuff on TikTok. Like a few that come to mind uh are like, for example, I'm not sure if you know this girl Javeria. She's in New York as well.
Yeah, she goes to. I think she graduated actually from Columbia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we had her on as a guest, and she's actually become a good friend of the podcast as well.
Oh,
And
nice,
so,
nice, nice.
yeah, we actually have a group chat with her. We send her like funny stuff once in a while, but like so that's a prime example. Like she's become a good friend. Another two guys who live in Toronto, Imad and Munib. I'm not sure if you've come across their content as well,
No, I haven't.
but yeah, we kind of had them on episodes as well. And so just like oh, like a perfect example actually, the Saleh family, we had them on an
Mm.
episode for like the Merit series. And so TikTok has helped us get access to more guests and helped us kind of help other people see us as like a podcast, which helps because one thing that we actually do, and if this is something interests you, then you could definitely reach as well, is we like to have these thing called marathons where we it's like an open live session, and
Hmm.
anyone can join, because typically like these kind of conversations, people want to be part of it, or they want to at least spectate. And so we literally just have like an open Zoom link, and we get people and we put them into like different breakout rooms so that they can like meet new people and talk about like cool interesting things. And yeah, and so like that helps people just kind of come together and kind of just like chat, talk about these sort of things and whatnot. So yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. That's something that I haven't heard before, actually.
Yeah,
So
we did
is it
it
like, yeah? Could you just like elaborate a bit more on that?
for sure. We did it once in I think January,
Uh huh.
and there were like 25 people who came, I think. And it was cool because there were people from different places. There were some people from like Australia, some people from the States, some people from Canada. And so it was really nice to see like different people that I've never met kind of come, and then we became friends after. And the really like the basis of like this like MPL marathon, and we're gonna have one actually every month starting June, because it's the summer and like we have more time, is that we're able to, for example, if there's a topic that we talked about on a podcast that other people want to talk about, like the one that I can think of that most people relate to is like culture versus religion, right?
Hmm.
And so a lot of people have a different take on what culture versus religion is, and then they have like they want to talk about certain things. And so we'll have like, let's say like 25 or 30 people join the Zoom link, create like a breakout room, and then we have like a list, like a Google Doc list of like 10 or 15 different topics, and we'll just share it with them. And it's like, if you can choose whatever you want from this list, talk about whatever you want. If you just want to like, meet new people and chat about life, you can do that. It's chill. And so that way, we're able to meet new people and actually get potential guests as well. I know last time we did it, there was this one individual that one of the co-hosts really liked, and she's like, I'm definitely gonna get her on an episode because she's like really well spoken, whatever, whatever. It's just like a nice way of connecting and talking about people, and it's not recorded as well, so people feel like more comfortable, like voicing their opinion and whatnot. So yeah.
That's dope, man. So you guys seem like you're pretty active on every social media, like Instagram, TikTok. I'm guessing not Facebook because Facebook is kind of dead. But and YouTube, right? So how do you break down the work that goes into making the content for social media? Because that's a whole nother thing, like making sure like the like editing the small videos, making the graphics, and then like everything else that goes into that. Like how do you break down who does what in regards to that?
Yeah, so earlier I mentioned to you we have like these regroup meetings every like 4 to 6 weeks.
Hmm.
And initially when we started, we like really like strictly like defined who's going to be doing what. And as time goes on, we kind of like revise that list. And so, if someone has too much work, then we'll
Hmm.
offload that onto someone else. If we see that someone doesn't have too much and we want to plan something new, then we'll kind of give it to them. And so we like through time, we were able to kind of like figure out how much to allocate to each person. And if we have like a new initiative coming or whatever, we'll kind of like discuss how that work's going to be split, whatever. And so, like I said, after we're done like recording, I can definitely walk you through like how we do things.
That'd be
Because
amazing.
yeah,
It's gonna be
man.
really great.
Unfortunately, I can't share it, but
No worries, as long as I can hear it.
exactly, yeah. Special treatment. It's a
Alhamdulillah.
it's the if you host a podcast, you get access to it.
Hey, let's get it.
You get it,
Um,
yeah.
so, oh, sorry, did you have
No,
more
no,
to
no.
add?
That's I was done. I was done.
Okay, so the next question that I just remembered, this is actually the good question that I had from before. What is what where do you see MPL going like in the next few years, and do you have ideas to expand it from just being a podcast? Like I know people have this vision of making their project into a whole brand, into like doing different things. Like you said, you had the idea for like a different show at one point, so like different shows, making like a community, making different kind of, I don't know, things to sell. Like where do you see MPL going exactly, and do you have ideas to expand it?
Um, in terms of like expansion, I think the thing that we might head to next isn't necessarily in terms of like a brand, it's more just like content diversity. And
Hmm.
so one of the things that we wanted to do is maybe have like a segment that's more focused on like one-on-one. And so maybe
Hmm.
similar to like what we're doing right now, as opposed to like 4 or 5 people. But honestly, in terms of like creating it into like a brand and like making money off of it and stuff, to be honest, we've talked about it, and that's not really something that concerns us too much, because like even if you think about it like logistically, right? Like let's say that we were to go and start like selling merch and like start getting like brand partnerships, whatever. From an individual point of view, you have to split that money against amongst five people. And so like
Hmm.
even if you were making like $100 per like week or whatever, and you're putting in that much work, really what I'm pocketing is $20, right? Which is not a lot. I can literally just go work an hour at like a shoe store and make that money. You know what I mean? So money is definitely like the least of our concerns. Like honestly, like we're literally doing this for free. Like I think if the amount of time I've spent into MPL, even if I worked a minimum wage job, I'd easily have like a couple grand by now. All right, like easily, and like I'm doing it because it's something that I enjoy. So yeah, money wise, it's not really a thing. And like we actually talked about this at our most recent like regroup meeting, and we completely shut down the idea of like brand partnerships, just because we don't want um we don't want any of our content to become sort of like, clouded by like things that we just naturally are not, things that we don't believe in. Like I'm not gonna
Right.
promote like, you know uh, like men's like accessories and jewelry, because I don't wear men's accessories and jewelry. Like why would I promote something that I don't believe in? Or like, specific things like that. We just want to keep it like as pure and as clean as possible. So that's in terms of like finances. In terms of making it into like an actual brand and like what the eventual goal is in the next couple of years, honestly, I think the goal is to just keep it as like the platform where if you as like Shaquille, if someone comes to you and asks you like what would be the place where like healthy discourse happens for like young Muslim adults, I want you to think it happens at MPL. Like that's really the ultimate goal, right? And so inshallah we're able to reach it. And to be honest, like we don't really have like a definite like end goal in mind, in the sense that I don't know when this podcast will end. I don't know even if it'll last another year. I don't know if it'll last 5 years. I really don't know. And so the thing that we want to keep as our main focus is adding value and like, having good quality. And once that ends, then it ends. Like if that's in the next 6 months, then it's in the next 6 months. If it happens to be another couple of years, then it happens to be another couple of years. I'm not necessarily concerned with like, making it into like a brand and making it like this whole big thing so people can talk about it. It's like, no, man, I'm just gonna do my thing. If you vibe with it, you vibe with it. It is what it is.
Of course, yeah, that's super dope. One idea that I've been like ruminating over the past few months is like
Damn, this guy's using big words.
ruminating, right? So, what I did that's been in my head the past few months is like having an episode, um, like kind of like a roundtable talk with like a bunch of Muslim podcasters like yourself and other people that I'm familiar with, and having that as an episode in itself. And that I think that would be pretty cool. Just like have like maybe 6 7 people just like discuss different things, like different problems. It can be a moderator. That would be pretty cool. And that kind of relates to your idea of MPL being like the place for where Muslim public discourse is happening. And that's an amazing goal in of itself, because conversation is a huge thing. It's an important thing. And it shouldn't be undermined or undervalued at all.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And I'm hoping that we can try to, like, the only reason I want to grow is not because of the clout, is because it gives you access to better guests and like higher
Hmm.
quality guests. Because like frankly, like if I reach out to like, let's say like Muhammad Hijab, right? Like bro, I would love to have Muhammad Hijab on our podcast, but like yo, we're at like 1,000 followers on Instagram right now. There's like, why would he, he's a busy guy, like why would he want to come on MPL? But like if we were
You'd be
hypothetically,
surprised. You'd be surprised. I
yeah,
would say just reach out
honestly, like I'd be happy to, but like I need to have like a good episode in mind. Like I'm not just gonna reach out to
for
him and
sure.
then figure it out later. But like the idea is like, maybe Muhammad Hijab was a bad example, but the idea is like if you have that social clout, it gives you access to like more people than you initially.
Definitely. Yeah, greater collaborations, and you get to like pick their brain, where that's a privilege that no one else has. Like this is an amazing thing that I get to do, where like I'm talking to people that most people like wouldn't even think of talking to. Like this is an amazing privilege, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And like the business side of me just thinks of like all the like potential networking that happens. Right? Like bro, like if like straight up, if I need to go to like New York for a weekend, like I'm hitting you up, bro.
Bro, I got you, no worries. We actually had a guest, Faisal Latif. He recites Quran and does nasheeds, and he wasn't staying with us. He was staying with another friend of his, but we basically drove up to him like in the Bronx, which is like a very long commute from where I am, and we basically like drove him around to an appointment that he had after, and so that was like that wasn't just an episode with him, that was also like him behind the camera as well, so that was like really cool to see. And yeah, it's like you said, like networking, making those connections, especially if you can get to see them behind the camera, that I think that's really worth it. Like that's super worth it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna wrap up, inshallah. I know we've been going on for a while now. So my very last question would just be, what advice do you have for people that want to start something like this, something like you and your friends did, but they have all of these kinds of things holding them back? Like, I don't have friends to start with. I don't have the equipment to start with. I don't think that I can give substance to these issues, but I really want to start something. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so I guess like two things. Number one, there's like this mentality. It's more of like you might hear this if you're an entrepreneur. It's called MVP. It's like the minimum viable product. And so the reason it's called a minimum viable product is because when you have a like as an entrepreneur, when you have a product and you want to market it,
Mm-hmm,
you want to basically have it as minimally functional as possible so that people realize the benefit of it, but
mm-hmm,
it's not so, you haven't fleshed it out to the extent where it's ready to launch. So like let's say you have like a phone, right? Like let's say you created the first phone ever. You wouldn't have it like, with all the hundreds of apps and like a touchscreen or whatever. You'd be like, nah, look, this is a machine that you can use to like call and text. And so having that mentality I think is important because you don't get wrapped up in this whole like perfectionistic mindset that I need to have everything right. It's like no, just like bare bones, get it out there and then work on it as you go. And so that's number one. Like number two, and this is kind of like an anecdote. So one of the other things that I did up until basically last summer was a few of my friends and I, we started this like mentorship program for like high school students and going into like university. And so through that, we had like a little podcast series. And like, bro, looking back at it, it was like quality was so bad. Like it was not up to par at all, but we still did it, right? And so that kind of helped in terms of just like knowing the podcasting scene and just like getting things done, and it benefited some people like the people kind of here in Toronto, whatever, because I was really involved with like high school mentorship, and if someone asked me like, yo, can you give me some advice, I just refer them to that episode or like our Instagram page or whatever. And so that's just a long-winded way of saying like if you want to start something, I don't think there's necessarily anything that is truly, truly holding you back. I know there's like some things that we perceive as barriers, but I
mm-hmm,
think those are generally barriers that we place in front of ourselves because we want something to be so perfect. But to be honest, like I said, if you go back to the whole like minimum viable product mindset, it allows you to kind of just like get your first foot in. And like I'll be honest, like the product won't be so glamorous and it won't be like 100%, but it's something, right? And another example I'll share. Last year with the whole like George Floyd stuff that was going on, me and just like this one other girl that I knew, we like just her and I like from scratch, we basically created like a fundraiser and it ended up raising like $1,500, right?
subhanallah.
And we did that, and do you know what the fundraiser was? It was just a resume critiquing fundraiser. Like I'm a business student and I have access to like a bunch of business students, and I told them like, listen, this is a fundraiser. You want to have your resume critique? Pay $5. We'll get someone to critique your resume for you. And then like people just donated. And like that was, I literally had that thought as I was showering. Like it was just like a passing thought, and I'm like, yo, let's just do it. And so I think generally we're capable of a lot more than we think. And there's a lot of ideas that I think generally we dismiss that we're actually like good, capable candidates for. And so I just encourage someone to just like put your foot out there and just kind of start it from that end. I get when you're trying to think of like a podcast, you want to have friends and you want to do all that. But if you as an individual can just get it started, I think people will follow. Because I think it's a lot harder to convince someone to, build a house as opposed to convince people to move in once the house is already built,
Mm.
right? And an example that comes to mind is there's this other podcast. It's called like Gen Z Talks or something like that. She's on TikTok as well. So she started. I don't know her personally. She started like a podcast. She's young. She's like 18 or something, and she was posting regularly on TikTok. She was growing, but then for the past month, she hasn't posted anything. And so
Mhm.
I think people they get burnt out and they kind of just give up. And one thing that she actually did was she started this podcast by herself, but then she started hiring people to fill other positions like, who wants to be my graphic designer, like who wants to be my co-host, who wants to be my social media manager, whatever. But if she hadn't already laid the foundation of her podcast, you know, it'd be like, who are you recruiting people? Why are you recruiting them? There's nothing to show for. And so just again, I think it all just goes back to that like MVP mentality, which I would just encourage whoever wants to do this to adopt.
For sure, man. That's more than what I was anticipating. And Jazakallah khair for all the gems that you dropped this past episode. I'd love to have you on for more episodes, definitely. So I'll definitely hit you up again sometime in
For
the near
sure,
future.
bro. For sure. And likewise, if there's anything that there's a burning topic you want to talk about, let me know. And if we ever host that on MPL, I'll definitely reach out to you.
Of course, man, inshallah. And yeah, I love stuff like this. I feel like a connection has definitely blossomed and definitely like you said, networking, right?
Yeah,
In
bro.
the
If you're
business
in
world.
Toronto, hit
So
me up.
of course, man, of course, Toronto, of course. So yeah, Jazakallah khair once again.
Like,
Do you have anything to shout out? Of course, like MPL, like where can they listen to that? And
oh
anything
yeah.
else you wanna shout out?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, MPL, we're pretty active. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like I like to think of ourselves more as like a YouTube
Hmm.
focused podcast, but we are on like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and we post like clips and stuff on TikTok. So anyone who doesn't want to watch the full thing but just wants to get like a short, like 30-second like version of us, you can check us out on TikTok and like follow us on Instagram as well. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. So guys, you heard it here. Definitely check them out. Check out Faizan. Is it Faizan or Faizan?
Faizan.
Faizan. Okay, sorry, I've been mispronouncing it.
All
I'm really
good,
sorry
bro.
about that.
All good.
Okay, so yeah, definitely check them out. TikTok, YouTube, audio platforms as well. And let them know that the Shady Jude sent you. I don't know, maybe that'll give me some social clout there.
Yeah.
And while you guys are leaving, I'm gonna give my inside scoop on on
Yeah.
that thing we were talking about before. So subhanak Allahumma bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. And basically I just recite this dua because I made a promise to a guest previously. He was an imam and he said, Shaquille, I want you to promise me to recite this dua at the end of every episode. And basically this dua, if you recite it at the end of every meeting, every sinful thing that you said will inshallah be forgiven, and your talk will only be full of barakah, inshallah. So with that, guys, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and I will see you next week.
Oh, man.